Hey fellas, hope all my friends here in the USA have had a good Thanksgiving. Hope all my other friends from around the world are having a nice weekend. I got a lot of painting done this yesterday and today, and my wife went shopping on Black Friday, wife and kids, so I had a whole day to paint. Anyway, I put together a video for you, kind of giving you an idea of how I went about painting this one. I don't go real in depth, but I do kind of point out some things and kind of my thought process on how I painted it. I also use some oil paints at the end and kind of show you how I do that. I'm no expert in oil paints, you know, but the more I practice, the better I'm going to get. So if you want to see the finished model and don't want to sit through the 25 minutes of painting, then here's a timestamp right there, and you can just check out the finished model. Otherwise, enjoy the video. All right, guys, I did a little bit of work since we last left off. I did try to clean up the tail fin here just a little bit, but to be quite honest with you, in order to get this looking perfect, I would basically have to go in and fill in all these panel lines and just redo them. And even at that, it's been my experience when you mismatch different fillers to resin, it's going to turn out worse than what it is. So I did the best I could. Hopefully the painting and stuff will cover it up. I did add some rivet detail along the fuselage. The wings, I think, were supposed to be wood, made of wood, so we're not doing any riveting there. I did get my base completed, and this is the Huckebein. Like I said, I don't know how to pronounce this crap. But apparently, its namesake is Hans Huckebein, or Huckebein, which was a raven from a German cartoonist and illustrator. So I just went ahead and painted that, kind of made it look old, and I think that'll look really cool. This is a smaller base than what I'm typically used to, but this is a smaller plane, so I was kind of caught between, you know, I had a bigger, rounder base, but I thought this looked a little more appropriate for the size of the plane. So I think it all kind of goes, I think it all kind of fits. So how I'm going to paint this, and because this is a multicolored camouflage scheme, I'm not going to do any black basing or pre-shading. All my shading is going to be post shading. And I've got 3 separate colors that I've mixed up: RLM 75, 76, and 74. And what I plan on doing is a splinter camouflage scheme on the top surface of the wings. Right along here, along the top, I'll paint the darker colors and probably do a little bit of a splinter camouflage scheme, but I'm also going to have it kind of be modeled down, so I'll have some modeling along the side here as well. Whenever you go to paint something like this, you always think about, okay, what should I start with? Should I start with the lighter color, the RLM 76, and paint on my bottom surfaces and then go over? Well, to be honest with you, I don't know that there's really a right way to do it. My plan is to paint the wing surfaces, the upper wing surfaces with the darker splinter camo, paint along here with the darker colors, and then come in with the RLM 76 and then paint the lower surfaces. I'm still going to need to do a lot of touch-up, but then once I get everything painted, I'm going to come back and I'll do my modeling and blending and just kind of go from there. So I don't know that there's really a right way to do it. I am going to, just to mix things up, I am going to paint the front nose area a little bit different shade of gray and like a darker shade. And also I'm going to do the back end here where the exhaust is a natural metal finish right along here. So that'll kind of divide things up. I don't know that I'm going to put any stripes. I will put either decals or paint. I will paint the crosses on, and I may paint some numbers. I don't know, but I do have a bunch of different decals to work with. So we'll decide what we want when we get the camouflage on it. So I'm going to get to painting and be right back. Okay, now I got my first base layers on of the darker colors, this Splinter camo scheme. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the lighter gray and I'm just going to go along here and very delicately paint the lighter shade on the bottom and right along here and kind of feather it. And then I'll probably come back in with the darker shades, and I've got it mapped out. This back on the stand. Now I've kind of got it mapped out. And sometimes I do this with my camouflage schemes, is I go ahead and draw it out on a piece of paper. Doesn't have to be perfect, but this is kind of what I want to do. So I want to draw this color, these darker colors, down and make this little kind of squiggly pattern, almost like it was just painted nonchalantly, and maybe put a few little modeling, a little bit of modeling down here, maybe along this vertical stabilizer. I think that's probably the way I'm going to go. And then I'll come in and I'll mask this area off and paint this a different shade of gray, and then I can come in here and do my natural metal finish. I am going to probably tape off a straight line right along the leading edges, so I can have a very distinct demarcation line where the light gray meets the dark gray. I am going to have to be careful when I paint the light gray to watch my overspray. It's going to be kind of hard, and in these kind of camouflage patterns, if you've painted any BF 109s, it is kind of hard to, to watch your overspray. But that's why I went ahead and did this first, and then come in and paint the light gray. And then I'll come in and do some more with the darker shades to kind of model it up and make it look kind of cool. I'll be using my fine airbrush for a lot of this, and that way I can thin it down and control the air pressure and limit my overspray. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back and take a look at what it looks like at that stage. Okay. Now, since I didn't do any pre-shading, well, let me start off. I've kind of jumped ahead, which is typically what I end up doing when I do these painting videos, just because I kind of get on a roll and don't bother to stop to film it. And a lot of this stuff's kind of rudimentary. But I've got the base color down, and I've got my modeling done, and I'm really happy with how that turned out. I had to go in and I kind of redid it. In fact, I brought my camouflage down to the wing, and so it's basically just even with the wing root. I was really happy with how that turned out. Then I masked off and painted the emblems, then put a clear coat on it, and then I added just a few decals. What's kind of cool is I used the same Hans Huckebein decal that I used, that I painted onto the base. And I got that from an MAK kit. If you don't know what MAK is, Machine and Krieger. They're kind of a sci-fi kit. I think I've probably shown one on my channel before. But yeah, I always save those decals because they have a lot of older German images on a lot of their decals. So I found that one, so I thought it'd be kind of cool to put it on the plane, since that's what it's named after. So anyway, after I did that, I ended up putting another gloss coat on it, hit it with a dark panel wash, and then put a flat coat. And what I use for my flat coat is Tamiya XF86 flat clear. Now this isn't what I typically use for my final flat coat. I like to use a Winsor & Newton matte finish for that, but this is a really durable flat coat that I can use with oil paints. So I like to get it all flat, and then I can start with some oil paint. So over here I've got a bunch of different colors. Now to add a little bit of variation in the colors, what I'm going to do is do a dot filtering technique. And in order to do that, I'll get some mineral spirits. Since this is oil-based and I have my acrylic down, it shouldn't affect the paint. So I'm just kind of going to go along with the mineral spirits and wet down the wings. Then I'll come along with a few different colors. I got some yellow. And you can kind of play around with the colors. You may think, well, why yellow? Well, I'm just kind of playing around right now to see what I like, and I like to kind of mix it up. I've got some blue, a little bit of blue. I've got some off-white. We'll put a little bit of off-white up here in the front. And I've also got some raw umber. Try a little bit of that. So we're just throwing kind of everything at it. Okay, and now I will take a brush and I will come along and I'm going to start just blending these. And if you find out you don't like it, you can just take a paper towel with some enamel thinners and wipe it away. And you can kind of blend it and tone it down, but this is going to add some streaking and a little bit of just some various tones. That can be real subtle. But it'll kind of give it a little bit of life. Because right now, without any pre-shading, it is kind of bland. And I did do a little bit of lightening up the camouflage colors with some white and kind of hitting it. You can probably see that. You know, there's a little bit of white here and there. So that did kind of add a little bit. So it's just a matter of playing with it. Now I'm going to leave it like that. And then let it dry and see what it looks like. I may come back with some more mineral spirits. I may add a little bit more color here and there. But that's just basically all it is. And it's just going to give a little added look to it. I'm not sure that I really like the white. It kind of really brings things down. So I may actually just wipe this away. So we'll put some more mineral spirits on here. I'll get a paper towel and I will just wipe it away. So let's try this again. I won't leave out the white this time because I think that just kind of dulls everything down. So let's throw in a little bit of blue. Right, maybe a little bit of yellow. I kind of like yellow. Just adds a little bit different color. And then we'll add some of this brown. Maybe a little bit more of that, just to kind of dirty it up a little bit. Now, what I don't really want an extremely weathered plane. My idea that this is one of Germany's kind of first models, and it hasn't really seen service. It's still kind of their test model. It's kind of the idea that I'm thinking. And I'm kind of keeping it with the airflow. All right, now I'm gonna let that dry. Yeah, I kind of like that. But I'll let that dry, and I may come back and add a little bit more. Just kind of see how it goes. But that's gonna kind of grunge it up and give it a little bit of extra variety in the color area. All right, well, I'm going to keep it this, and then we'll come back after I get this down and we'll do some more. Alrighty, well, I put a flat coat on it after I did my streaking with the various colors. And I've also highlighted with a little bit of white along the upper surfaces, just very minor, with just a little bit of off-white and along the leading edge. And next what I'm doing is I'm shading some of these creases where the panel lines are. And just a few of them, some of these major ones. I've already done this one, and I'll show you how I do this. So I'll probably put it upside down here. What I'm doing is I'm taking some smoke colored oil paint, and I'm just going along this seam, if we can get it in camera. And I'm taking a thin brush and I'm just going along and putting this. And I'm being somewhat liberal with it. I don't want any chunks of oil paint in there, but I am giving it a good coat. And going along inside that crack. And if you've watched my BF 109 video, I do kind of show you how I do this. But this is kind of a recap. And this is going to add a little bit of extra shading that would have probably been there had I pre-shaded it. Now I'm just going to take a dry brush and just kind of bring that down a little bit. And it's not going to come off, and I'm not going to be able to, this is basically just blending it with the brush. Now I'm going to take a dry Q-tip, and I'm just going to come along here and try to wipe away most of this. It's almost like I'm doing a panel line wash with dry oil paint. In other words, not thinned down. And then you can come back, and again, if it's a little too much or you want to start over, you can just take your mineral spirits and come along and wet it and wipe it away. And it's as simple as that. Now I've got a shaded panel line right there. And if you look at it, it's almost like you pre-shaded it. And you can control it, and you can come down, bring it down a little farther. But I just want to darken up that area. Now along the bottom here, I'll do something a little bit different. So I'll wet this down with some mineral spirits. And I just want to darken this area, but I don't want it too stark. Then I'll take my smoke color again, and I'll just kind of model it. Then I'll come back with a brush and just lightly blend it in. And that's just going to darken that area just a little bit. If I want it to be a little more dark, I come back in with my oil paint, blend it in some more. And that gives a little shading. And once that dries, I can come back in with another dry brush and blend it in a little bit more if it's a little too ragged, which this might be. So let's come in with a dry brush and just kind of soften it up a little bit. Still a little wet. Okay, so I've shaded these panel lines with the flaps and the ailerons, the horizontal stabilizers, and now the vertical stabilizer fin. So I'm going to go ahead and probably do some streaking, much like I did with the wings right along here. Got some kind of goober on there. I'm not sure what that is. Wipe that off. And then I'll hit the bottom. Now I did do a little bit of streaking just like I did on the upper surfaces. I did that on the lower surfaces and then along the sides here, but I want to kind of darken this up much like I did up here. So I'm going to get on with that, and then I may streak it a little bit as well. And then I'll come along and I'll show you what I'm going to do on the bottom just to kind of dirty this up. So I got my mineral spirits on here. Oh, what this stuff is, I got all over this thing. Okay. And I got some smoke. Just to kind of dirty this up just a tad. Might have went a little heavy. And then I may use a little bit of brown. Or raw umber. And then we'll do the same thing. And I like working with oil paints. I haven't quite mastered it yet, but it can give you some good effects. And I'm going to sneeze here in a second. Probably. And it does dry pretty quick. This Abtalung 502 that I use dries pretty quick. So then I can come in here and I can kind of blend it in. And I just want it kind of grungy. And that's all there is to it. And then I may add some streaks. I don't know. We'll see when we get there. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and darken up some of these panel lines on the bottom. Do a little bit of streaking, and it may be ready for its final coat. I don't know. Oh, and then I am going to spray some mixture of NATO black and brown inside the exhaust, and probably right around the edge, just to make it look a little burnt. So, all right. Catch you in a minute. All right, I got the flat coat on it, and it is finished. Lifted up my tape and didn't really have too many problems. There was a couple little spaces where it bled through, just because I wasn't able to mask it off like I normally do. So I kind of had to have a patchwork of tape. So I did get a little bit of bleed through, but nothing that couldn't be fixed with a tiny Q-tip and some rubbing alcohol. Now the matte coat that I use, or the final matte coat, is this Winsor & Newton matte UV varnish. And it's pretty thick. It's almost like, looks like white glue. Look at that. It's just kind of thick. So what I do is I thin it down with some Vallejo airbrush thinner. About 60 to 70% of thinner to UV varnish. It goes on real smooth. And then once it dries, it takes a little bit for it to dry. It doesn't really dry instantly like your Tamiya stuff. But once it does dry, it's nice and flat, and it really brings out all the weathering, and really just lightens it up. So we'll just spin it around. I did come in with an airbrush, and when I shot the back end to kind of dirty it up, if you can see that, I did a mixture of NATO black and a red brown, about 50-50, real thin, and then I came in there and just kind of dirtied it up. And then I also hit a few little spots just to add a little bit more dirt that I didn't get with the oil paint. And I really think it turned out pretty cool. And there's a good look at the bottom. Nice and grungy, but not overly dirty. And I didn't do any chipping on this one. I just, in my own head, I kind of figured this was a test plane that hasn't really seen much service, and it's just kind of got a little dirty. The straw that I put up in there has worked like a charm. I'm going to have to do that more often. It's a lot better than messing with the two-part epoxy if I don't have to. You know, other than that, it's I'm pretty pleased with it. I think it looks pretty cool. Of course, everybody has their own opinions. I kind of got my own taste and my own style, so to each their own. But I really like how it turned out. I hope the owner does. I know this video has been a little bit long, so I'll show you some pictures, and thanks for watching.